In today's video, let's take a look at emotional cocooning and the false identity it creates. So emotional cocooning, what's that? And how does it create a false identity? Maybe you were raised in a very toxic environment, something horrendous happened to you, and you began to think it's just safer to sort of retreat from life. I'm just going to keep my feelings to myself. I found out it's too risky to share them with others, and so we begin weaving our emotional cocoon. Now, when we're younger, this cocoon can serve a lot of healthy purposes. We need to protect ourselves in a way, especially if we're being raised by abusive parents, let's say, or something horrendous happened in your teenage years or early 20s or something. Maybe you were physically assaulted, a witness to a horrific crime, or something got the wheels turning where you went on mental and emotional overload. This is too much. Or also, if you weren't helped to just simply have a voice as a child growing up, you had to keep everything in because you were walking on eggshells, well, that can start emotional cocooning as well. In a way, it's a form of dissociation, isn't it? It's like all this is happening out here, I'm going to dodge it somehow, put up walls to it, dissociate from it, and stay in this little safe cocoon. We create an alternate reality, really, in a way. And this alternate reality can create a false identity. We may not even be aware that we're living behind a mask, an avatar, if you will, because we just think it's normal. I have to do this to survive, so it becomes just the way I go through life, not realizing it involves a heavy degree of dissociation and pulling back and keeping ourselves safe in this cocoon. Then we may have friends or romantic relationships or co-workers who see us as who we are not. They're seeing the avatar. Now, on some level, the person who's cocooning may have feelings of being an imposter, the imposter syndrome, if you will. They know something's off, but because they haven't done any therapeutic work around what happened to them in the first place that caused them to cocoon, they're just going with this gut feeling that something's a little bit off here, and they can't really connect with people because they're trying to connect through a false identity, through a false self. Now, because I was raised in a dysfunctional family, I also began that journey quite young of learning to put on, saying what needed to be said rather than coming from some sort of authentic place within myself. This causes a lot of problems later that you're going to eventually have to deal with. To not deal with it, to try to ignore it, is going to make you very unhappy. So we have to look at how our history is keeping us from enjoying the present moment. It's the lesson that we can't trust our feelings all the time. We can observe and know what we're feeling. That, of course, is important. But if we come from a traumatic past, can we really trust them? If we view a situation as dangerous and it's really not, then the feelings may be creating panic or anxiety within us, but there's really, in essence, nothing to be afraid of. It's simply a trauma response, part of our cocooning, something we had to do to cocoon ourselves to get through it all. Or feeling a feeling of hopelessness in a situation when in reality there's many options we could take to help ourselves. It's not hopeless at all, but our feelings make us believe it's hopeless. Or on the flip side, children who are perhaps very spoiled as they grow up, thinking that I'm entitled to everything, they get their way with most things growing up. Then they're going to have a hard lesson as they go out into the adult world and realize the world is not going to cater to you at all. Then they're going to have a really tough day of reckoning, so to speak, because they almost have to rebuild themselves from scratch. Either that, or perhaps get fired from the job that they really like. Or either that or keep getting dumped by their boyfriend or girlfriend. So be very leery of letting your emotions or feelings dictate your behavior. I often tell my clients in session, we need to have a gulf between these two things, symbolically. We need to be able to delineate that, because sometimes, especially if we're coming out of trauma, if we're waiting for our feelings to lead the way, that's not going to happen perhaps for a long time, perhaps many years. But we are in recovery, we are working on ourselves. So at first we have to let healthy behavior lead us and the feelings eventually catch up. So let's say, for example, a woman is trapped in a very unhealthy relationship. There's domestic violence going on. Her feelings based on her own childhood trauma are telling her to stay. It's repeating what's familiar. Who else am I going to find out there? So the feelings are saying stay, but she's getting beaten on a regular basis and know her life is threatened. So she's going to have to trust her behavior to get her out of the situation. She knows it's the healthier behavior. She knows it's healthier for her and her children to get out of there. Then she has to rely on that. She doesn't want to rely on her feelings in this case. Yes, she would say to a therapist, I want to stay. I'm craving to stay in the relationship, because you see, to stay means she doesn't have to really look inward and grow up and look at difficult topics and emotions that she's shoved to the side for many years based on her childhood trauma. So yeah, she doesn't want to look at any of that, so she thinks she wants to stay. The feelings seem to be telling her so. She can't honor those feelings. The behavior will lead the way for her to get away from this toxic person and hence likely save her life. So we see how the cocooning, keeping ourselves safe when we're younger, dissociating, then creates a false identity, which then can get deeper and deeper and deeper as we go through life if we don't deal with it. More and more people think this is who we are. We may even start to believe it ourselves. We get out of touch with what our essence is. We don't even know what our essence is, let's say. And so we can get into a lot of trouble this way, including the example I just gave a minute ago. But there's many, many more examples like that, of course. Our feelings and emotions are, of course, real to us, and we need to know what those are and share them with ourselves and maybe a therapist. But we also need to know when it's distorting our sense of reality and what's in our best interest. Our feelings are often rooted in the past and some sort of trauma, of course, which may have very little to do with the here and now and can keep us from making objective, healthy decisions. So we need to look squarely at our past and what happened to us so it doesn't keep controlling us in our here and now and in our future. Would love to hear any thoughts you have about this topic. Please leave them in the comment section below. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.